The night of November 12, 1995, is one Stonebrook, Oregon, will never forget. Patrol Officer Emily Carter, 28, was last seen during her late-night highway patrol. Her cruiser was found idling on the shoulder of Route 46, headlights slicing through the fog. The driver's door hung open, her radio crackled with unanswered dispatch calls, and her hat lay in the damp grass. There were no signs of a struggle, no footprints, no clues, as if she had stepped out of her life and vanished. For 7 long years, her disappearance would haunt the town and her family. Before we dive deeper into this chilling story on missing shadows, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Emily Carter wasn't just a patrol officer, she was the kind of person who carried light into every room she entered. At 28, she had already earned a reputation in Stonebrook as both fearless and deeply compassionate. Whether she was responding to late-night calls on icy highways or helping a stranded driver change a tire, Emily treated every person with the same calm professionalism, a quality that made her both admired and beloved. Born and raised in Stonebrook, Emily had always been tied to the rhythms of small-town life. Her father, Henry Carter, had been the town's fire chief for nearly 2 decades, and her mother, Linda, was a schoolteacher who taught half the kids in town. Emily's younger brother, Ryan, remembered her as a mix of fierce protector and best friend. She was the kind of sister who'd give you her jacket in the snow but still tease you about your haircut, Ryan would later recall. In the weeks leading up to that November night, nothing in Emily's life hinted at what was coming. She had recently been promoted to senior patrol officer, a milestone she celebrated quietly with a dinner at her parents' house. Friends said she seemed happy, even content, and there was talk that she had begun seeing someone, a local paramedic named Daniel Hayes. Her last day on duty had been like any other. The shift log showed routine calls, a traffic stop at 7:45 p.m., a roadside assist around 9:10 p.m., and then nothing. At 11:18 p.m., dispatch tried to reach her. No response. When fellow officers arrived on Route 46, all they found was her cruiser idling by the shoulder. What haunted everyone wasn't just her absence, but the eerie silence she left behind, a silence that would stretch on for 7 agonizing years. November 12, 1995, was the kind of night that seemed to swallow everything whole. A dense fog rolled over the quiet town of Stonebrook, blanketing Route 46 in a heavy mist that clung to the ground like smoke. It was a Sunday, the streets were empty, the diners closing early, and the only sound on the highway was the low hum of passing cars and the occasional chirp of Emily Carter's police radio. At 10:52 p.m., Emily radioed in for the last time. Her voice was steady but brief, reporting that she was doing a routine check along the backroads that cut through the forested edges of town. It wasn't unusual. Emily often volunteered for the late shift, knowing the darkness and solitude didn't bother her the way it did others. But by 11:18 p.m., when dispatch tried to reach her for a status update, there was nothing but static. Officer Mark Sullivan, her closest colleague and longtime friend, was the first to respond when the call came in. He remembered pulling up to Route 46 and seeing her cruiser idling by the shoulder, headlights slicing through the fog like ghostly beams. The driver's door was wide open. Emily's police hat was lying in the wet grass a few feet away, as though it had been dropped in haste. Her flashlight rested on the ground near the front tire, still switched on, its weak beam barely cutting through the mist. Inside the cruiser, her radio continued to crackle with unanswered calls. The driver's seat was adjusted just the way she liked it, her notepad and pen on the dashboard. Her half-finished coffee was still warm in the cup holder. There were no footprints, no tire tracks, no signs of a struggle. It was as if Emily had simply stepped into the fog and vanished. Within an hour, the area was crawling with officers, deputies, and K-9 units, all combing the roadside woods. But the fog was relentless, swallowing sound and light, making the search almost impossible. By dawn, there was still no sign of her. For Henry and Linda Carter, that night never ended. When Ryan arrived at the scene, he remembered the look in his father's eyes, a mix of disbelief and fear that would never fully fade. The morning after Emily's disappearance, Stonebrook felt like it had been turned upside down. The Carter family's name was on every tongue, and the usually quiet town was buzzing with questions. By 7 a.m., the search expanded beyond Route 46. State police, FBI agents, and local volunteers formed search parties, combing through dense forests, abandoned barns, and creek beds. Helicopters hovered above, their blades cutting through the heavy fog that stubbornly lingered into the afternoon. Officer Mark Sullivan led much of the early effort. He couldn't stop replaying the moment he found her cruiser, the open door, the still warm coffee, the eerie silence. "It's like she just evaporated," he said in a shaky voice during the first press briefing. The FBI quickly took over, treating Emily's disappearance as a possible abduction, though there was no evidence to confirm it. Special Agent Laura Mitchell, known for her work on missing person cases, arrived within 48 hours. "This case is unusual," she admitted. "No signs of struggle, no witnesses, no leads. It's as if she vanished into thin air, but we know that's never the case. Someone, somewhere, saw something." The investigation was intense. The FBI set up a command post at the Stonebrook Community Hall. Flyers with Emily's smiling face, brown hair pulled into a neat bun, warm hazel eyes, and her crisp patrol uniform were posted on every corner, in every diner, and along every road out of town. Her photograph stared back from the evening news, accompanied by emotional pleas from her family. Henry Carter, usually a pillar of strength, broke down during a televised interview. "Emily is my daughter, my pride, my world," he said, his voice trembling. "If anyone knows where she is, please bring her back to us." The leads were few and frustrating. One truck driver claimed he saw a patrol car with its lights flashing along Route 46 around 11 p.m., but he didn't recall seeing Emily. Another tip led investigators to a suspicious abandoned farmhouse 5 miles from the scene, but it turned out to be a dead end. By the end of the first week, the case had captured national headlines. Media vans lined the streets of Stonebrook. Reporters camped outside the Carter home, chasing any detail, even unconfirmed rumors, about the missing officer. Some speculated about foul play, others hinted at a secret life or relationship, but Daniel Hayes, the paramedic Emily had been seeing, dismissed those rumors with anger. Emily was happy. She loved this town and her job. She wouldn't have just walked away. Behind the scenes, the Carter family was crumbling. Linda spent nights staring at the front door, hoping Emily would just walk in, while Ryan joined every search party, hiking miles of rough terrain, calling her name until his voice gave out. "It felt like looking for a ghost," he later said. And yet, there was one detail that no one could explain: Emily's notepad, found in her cruiser. The last thing she'd written was a single word: whisper. The word whisper, scrawled in Emily's neat handwriting on her notepad, became the obsession of every investigator on the case. Agent Laura Mitchell kept staring at it during late-night strategy meetings, as if willing it to reveal its meaning. Was it a person? A place? A call sign? Or simply a word Emily jotted down in haste during a moment they couldn't yet piece together? Mark Sullivan, her partner and closest friend on the force, insisted that Emily was not the kind of person to write something without meaning. "If she wrote that down, it's a lead," he told Mitchell, frustration creeping into his voice. "She was sharp. Even in the middle of a chaotic scene, she would leave us a trail if she could." In the following days, investigators retraced Emily's last calls. Dispatch logs showed she had pulled over a black pickup truck just after 10:30 p.m. that night. The driver, a man named Paul Henley, claimed it was a routine stop for a broken taillight and that Emily let him go with just a warning. His story checked out, but something about his demeanor unsettled the team. He seemed nervous, avoiding eye contact when Agent Mitchell questioned him. Still, without evidence, they couldn't hold him. Meanwhile, the word whisper sparked an unexpected lead. A retired local sheriff recalled that back in the 1970s, a section of Route 46 near the old forested cliffs was locally known as Whisper Ridge, due to the strange echo of the wind. Teenagers used to dare each other to visit the spot at night. Could Emily have been heading there? Search teams expanded their efforts to the Whisper Ridge area. It was rough terrain, jagged rocks, thick woods, and caves where the wind howled like distant voices. Deep in one of these caves, they found something chilling, a scrap of fabric that matched the lining of Emily's patrol jacket. This discovery shifted the investigation. FBI forensics confirmed it was from her jacket, and there were faint traces of blood on the material. Suddenly, the case wasn't just a disappearance, it was treated as an active abduction with potential foul play. The Carter family was devastated by the news. Linda couldn't stop crying, while Henry clung to the hope that Emily might still be alive. Ryan, now consumed by anger, started his own searches with friends, determined to scour every inch of Whisper Ridge. Daniel Hayes, Emily's boyfriend, was questioned again. His alibi for that night was solid. He had been on shift at the county hospital, but he offered something that would lead to another clue. He remembered Emily telling him, just a week before her disappearance, that she had been working on something bigger than traffic stops, but hadn't shared the details. The phrase haunted Daniel, "If anything happens to me, look for the whispers." As days turned into weeks, the investigation shifted from routine procedure to a tangled web of suspects and secrets. Agent Laura Mitchell, known for her relentless attention to detail, set up a wall of evidence in the FBI's Stonebrook Command Center: maps of Route 46, photos of Whisper Ridge, and a timeline of Emily's last hours, all connected by strings of red thread. At the top of the suspect list was Paul Henley, the driver of the black pickup truck Emily stopped that night. His record wasn't spotless. He had a history of bar fights and a recent restraining order filed by an ex-girlfriend. Mitchell and Sullivan brought him in for questioning again, but Henley stuck to his story. He claimed he was heading home from a late fishing trip and that Emily had been in good spirits when she let him go. But something about him didn't sit right with Sullivan. "He's too calm," Sullivan muttered after the interview. "Almost rehearsed." Henley wasn't the only name surfacing. As the FBI dug into Emily's recent cases, they uncovered a disturbing detail. She had been quietly investigating a string of illegal activities along Route 46, including drug trafficking disguised as late-night truck shipments. Emily had kept her notes private, confiding only in a few trusted people, including Daniel Hayes. Daniel, heartbroken and defensive, became another person of interest for the investigators, not because they believed he was involved, but because his relationship with Emily might have exposed her to danger. Daniel admitted that Emily had seemed tense in the days before she vanished. "She told me there were people she didn't trust," he said. "But she didn't want to drag me into it. She was protecting me." The deeper the team dug, the more layers of Emily's life began to surface. While she was a dedicated officer, Emily also had a stubborn streak, the kind that wouldn't let her walk away from a lead, even if it meant taking risks. Sullivan remembered how she once chased a suspect alone through the woods for 2 miles rather than wait for backup. The word whisper continued to haunt the case. A new lead came from an unexpected source, an elderly local, Martha Decker, who lived near Whisper Ridge. She told investigators that in the weeks before Emily disappeared, she'd seen a black pickup parked late at night near the ridge. "I heard voices, men arguing," Martha said. Then silence. It's like the night swallowed them whole. By the 3rd week of the investigation, evidence began to trickle in. FBI forensics confirmed that the fabric scrap found in the cave at Whisper Ridge had traces of Emily's blood mixed with something else, motor oil. This led investigators to believe she might have been dragged or injured near a vehicle, possibly the same black pickup truck Henley drove. But just as the investigation seemed to narrow, a shocking discovery widened the scope again. While reviewing Emily's personal locker at the station, Agent Mitchell found a small key hidden inside her duty bag. The tag read, #23, Ridge Storage. When the FBI searched the storage unit, they found Emily's personal notes and photographs. Among them were Polaroids of truck convoys parked in deserted lots and names of local businesses suspected of being part of a smuggling operation. One note stood out, "They meet at Whisper Ridge. If I disappear, start here." It was clear, Emily had stumbled onto something much bigger than a routine patrol. By 2002, 7 long years had passed since Emily Carter vanished, and the case had turned into one of Stonebrook's most infamous cold files. The town moved on, at least on the surface, but for Emily's family and Officer Mark Sullivan, time had only deepened the wound. Then, on a rainy evening in early March 2002, a call came in that would change everything. A man named Earl Watkins, a drifter with a criminal record, walked into a sheriff's station 2 towns over. He was intoxicated, half rambling, but he muttered something that caught a deputy's attention. "I know what happened to that lady cop. Whisper Ridge, they buried it there." The deputy immediately called the FBI. Special Agent Laura Mitchell, who had never fully let go of Emily's case, drove to interview Watkins. He was shaky and paranoid, convinced that they were still watching him. Between incoherent mutterings, he gave a name that the FBI had heard before: Paul Henley. "He was running things," Watkins said, gripping the table with trembling hands. "He caught the cops snooping around. I heard him say, 'We can't let her talk.'" Watkins claimed he had been part of a smuggling ring that used Whisper Ridge as a drop-off point for drugs hidden in trucks. According to him, Emily had witnessed a late-night exchange between Henley and his crew. "She wasn't supposed to be there," Watkins whispered. "They grabbed her." Most of his story was vague, but he gave one detail that investigators couldn't ignore: a specific location near Whisper Ridge, marked by an old pine tree with a rusted metal sign. A new search team assembled, this time with advanced forensic tools unavailable in 1995. Drones flew over the rugged terrain, and ground-penetrating radar scanned the soil near the pine tree. On the second day, they found something buried beneath layers of earth: a rusted metal container. Inside were several items wrapped in plastic: Emily's badge, her watch, and a torn piece of her uniform jacket. The discovery was enough to officially reopen the case with Henley as the prime suspect. When confronted with the new evidence, Henley didn't crack at first. He claimed Watkins was making up stories for attention. But the FBI now had leverage. Forensic testing on the rusted container revealed fingerprints, Henley's. Mark Sullivan sat in on the interrogation, his fists clenched under the table. "You left her there, didn't you?" he asked quietly, his voice trembling. Henley's facade began to crack. "I didn't mean to," he muttered after hours of questioning. She wouldn't stop digging." According to Henley, Emily had caught them unloading contraband that night. In the panic, they forced her into the woods. "I didn't kill her," he claimed, eyes darting. "I left her tied up. I thought someone would find her." Although Henley's confession was incomplete, it gave investigators their first real understanding of what had happened. The final search expanded beyond Whisper Ridge, with cadaver dogs leading them deeper into the forest. On April 19, 2002, they found a shallow grave, a site so overgrown it had been missed in all prior searches. Inside lay remains confirmed by DNA to be Emily Carter's. Stonebrook went silent when the news broke. After 7 years, the nightmare had an answer, but the grief felt fresh all over again. Henry and Linda Carter wept together on their porch as the entire town gathered to honor Emily's memory. The arrest of Paul Henley shook Stonebrook to its core. For years, he had lived just a few miles from the Carter family, quietly maintaining his mechanic shop, blending into the fabric of the town as if nothing had happened. When the FBI took him into custody, the town gathered near the courthouse, watching as he was escorted inside in handcuffs, his once smug expression replaced by something hollow and defeated. The trial began in early fall of 2002. The courtroom was packed every day with reporters, townspeople, and Emily's family, who sat silently in the front row. Henry Carter kept a framed photo of Emily on his lap during every session, while Linda held Ryan's hand so tightly her knuckles turned white. The prosecution painted a chilling picture. Henley and his associates had been running a smuggling operation along Route 46 for years. Emily, during her routine patrols, had stumbled across a late-night exchange at Whisper Ridge. The defense tried to argue that Henley never intended to harm her, that it was all a terrible accident. But the evidence told a different story: her blood on the fabric scrap, Henley's fingerprints on the buried container, and his own reluctant confession sealed his fate. Mark Sullivan testified on the third day of the trial. His voice cracked as he described the night he found Emily's empty cruiser. "She was more than just my partner," he said, staring at Henley. "She was family. And you took that from all of us." Watkins, the drifter who had come forward, testified as well. His account, though messy and riddled with fear, gave the jury a harrowing glimpse into what had happened that night. He described how Henley and another accomplice tied Emily near the ridge, threatening her to stay quiet. When she fought back, things escalated. After 2 weeks of gut-wrenching testimonies and evidence, the jury returned with a unanimous verdict: guilty. Henley was sentenced to life in prison without parole. The verdict brought some measure of justice, but for the Carter family, the wounds were still raw. At Emily's memorial service, held on what would have been her 35th birthday, over 300 people gathered at the Stonebrook Community Hall. Flowers and candles surrounded a large portrait of Emily in her patrol uniform, her warm smile immortalized in the frame. Daniel Hayes, who had quietly carried his grief for 7 years, gave a heartfelt speech. "Emily wasn't just a patrol officer," he said, voice shaking. "She was my best friend, my partner, my future. She gave everything to protect this town, even her life. We owe her more than we can ever repay." Mark Sullivan struggled to hold back tears as he laid Emily's badge on the podium. "I promised I'd find the truth for you," he whispered, "and I did. But I'd give anything to have you back." Over the next few months, Stonebrook came together to honor Emily's legacy. A scholarship fund was set up in her name for young women pursuing law enforcement careers. Whisper Ridge, once a symbol of fear, was transformed into a memorial site with a simple plaque, in memory of Officer Emily Carter, who gave her life for the truth. 1967 to 1995. While the pain of her loss would never fully leave, there was a sense of peace knowing that her story had found an ending. The whispers that had haunted the town for years had finally been silenced. 7 years after Emily Carter vanished, Stonebrook was no longer the same quiet town it once was. Yet, in some strange way, her story had reshaped the community. Her disappearance, and the relentless fight to uncover the truth, had bonded the townspeople in ways they never expected. Henry Carter often visited the memorial at Whisper Ridge. On one crisp October morning, he stood there with Linda and Ryan, watching the autumn leaves fall gently onto the plaque bearing Emily's name. "She's not just gone," Henry said softly. "She lives in every life she touched, and in every truth we fight to protect." Linda slipped her hand into his, her eyes wet but steady. Daniel Hayes had since moved to Portland, but every year on Emily's birthday, he sent a letter to her parents, not just to remember her but to remind them of how deeply she had mattered. In one of his letters, he wrote, "Emily taught me that doing the right thing is never about recognition. It's about courage. Even when no one is watching, even when it costs you everything." Officer Mark Sullivan continued his work, but he carried Emily's badge inside his jacket as a silent promise. Whenever he felt weary or uncertain, he would touch the badge and remember the woman who refused to look away from injustice. Emily's story became more than a cold case solved. It became a reminder of perseverance, truth, and love, of how one person's integrity could ripple through an entire town. Her determination to uncover the smuggling ring, even at great personal risk, ultimately dismantled a network that could have destroyed countless lives. The final moral of Emily Carter's story is simple yet profound. Truth has a voice, even when silenced. Courage doesn't always survive, but it always inspires. And justice, no matter how delayed, can heal what fear once broke. If this story gave you chills, drop a comment with your thoughts below. And if you want more real-life mysteries like this, subscribe now and check out the next video waiting for you on the screen. Trust me, you won't want to miss it.